Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out this evening, and can we please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we had a couple special presentations, well actually three, on our agenda. We're holding the leaders of the pack until our March meeting, just because everybody got the weather reports today saying there was going to be inclement weather this afternoon, this evening, and we didn't want the children to come out. So we'll go right into our 5-year plan, and we have Chris.
Yep.
Chris from Bernard Donegan is going to do a presentation for us.
Good evening, everyone. Chris DiCarlo, Vice President, BPD Finance. I have an update for this evening for your 5-year long-range forecast. The last time we did one of these was almost 2 years ago in February 2024. So we'll give you an update on kind of where things stand in terms of your projections of fund balance, how the capital project financing turned out, and some more. Just if you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop me. Just starting off, what a long-range plan is. Again, this is not necessarily a budget document. This is more an evaluation of trends that we're seeing in your fund balance and your revenues and expenses to try to identify areas where maybe things are outpacing, expenditures are outpacing the revenues. So kind of seeing what that picture looks like down the road for the next 5 years. These are not static documents. They should be looked at every year or every 2 years. The last time we did one was, like I said, in February 24. So again, getting on the cycle of doing these updates every couple of years just kind of gives us a checkpoint or a place, and to be able to see how we've done over the last couple of years, and where we have opportunities to improve on things going forward. So next slide is a look at the $21 million capital project. So a lot of data on the page here, but to boil it down, the top half of the page, the boxed in section, is each of your individual SED project numbers that you had for phases 1 and phase 2 of the project. All final cost reports have been filed for the project, and we're seeing building aid flowing on all individual project numbers. The bottom half of the page represents the financial plan. So there was your capital reserve contribution and a $450,000 cash transfer into the project. And then the first financing was back in June of 24, a bond anticipation note for $15.1 million. And then we converted in June of 25 to the permanent financing serial bonds. That's a little over a $19 million DASNY serial bond. And again, there's 2 different ways we can issue our bonds as a public school district in New York State, either through the public market and issue our bonds on our own through Wall Street, or we can do a pooled financing with DASNY. In this case, based on what interest rates were doing in the spring of 25, it was determined that the bond would go through DASNY. And the real advantage of the issuing a bond through the dorm of the state of New York is back up in the text box in the page here, you can see the state assigns us a reimbursement rate for our building aid to come back in. So by going through the DASNY program, we bonded at 4.12%, but the state and DASNY overrode our reimbursement rate from 3.7 or 3.5 or 3.75 up to that 4.128%. So a matching rates on our revenues and expenditures. So again, the tighter we can keep the spread between our bond rate and our reimbursement rate, that results in less local share or less levy of taxes needed for the project. The other open project is the district's share of the Ulster-BOCES capital project. The 5th and final payment is due this July for that project. So you've made your first 4 payments. Your first payment was made with cash, and then the subsequent 3 payments were done through borrowing. So we've been currently picking up the funds at the end of June for each year that you need to make those payments by July 15th with BOCES. So the current plan right now, the pink unshaded box and the green unshaded box kind of the middle right part of the page there represents the bond anticipation note that we are anticipating to issue in June of 26 to pick up the funds for the last payment, with the goal of converting that to permanent financing in June of 27. At that point, you will have made all of your payments to the BOCES. And by waiting a little bit outside of that payment, it'll give us a little bit more clarity working with the BOCES on what the aidability of the project is. So then we'll take a look at what makes sense in terms of terming that bond, whether it's 10, 12, or 15 years, depending on what interest rates are doing, and depending on what the aidability ends up being for the project. Any questions on the capital project or the BOCES project?
Do we receive any assistance or aid on the BOCES project, or is that straight?
Yep. Yeah, you get so since you're borrowing, you get your aid back based on your debt service payments. It works slightly different than your a traditional capital project that you would do locally, where you get aid based on your expenditures. You get your principal and interest times our water ratio, and then multiplied by the aidability percentage of the project itself. So you do get reimbursement back for that through BOCES aid. Next slide takes a look at your outstanding debt service. The blue columns A through D represents your buildings, inclusive of that BOCES capital project. So we're projecting out your debt service for all of the known financings, for all of your bonds that have been issued that you currently have debt outstanding for, as well as the aid coming back in column B. In column C, we're showing the use of some of your debt service fund in some of the years there. Strategically using that, not in a one-shot, so it doesn't have a negative implications on your tax cap calculation. So we're just using some of those dollars to offset the local share. Represents the local share that's hitting the tax levy based on our share of the project. Again, the state reimburses us 66% for our building aid ratio, and the balance is either covered through capital reserve or a tax levy. And then in the orange columns there, E through H, we are showing your debt service for your outstanding bus purchases and the transportation aid coming back in on those purchases. We are not currently projecting out any bus purchases beyond 25-26. It's our understanding that there may not be an intention to do a bus purchase in 26-27. So for future versions of this, we may want to look at incorporating maybe a long-term replacement plan of your buses and see what that might look like in terms of projecting out beyond the upcoming 5 or 6 years that we're projecting currently based on your outstanding debt. Page 6 of the report just takes a look at graphically what does it look like for us. So the blue bars represent the local share for our buildings. The orange bars represent the local share for our buses. In terms of planning for future capital projects, we typically try to look for when do those blue bars start to fall off. And that's an opportunity that if you have the needs and the timing can line up perfectly, we might be able to build in a capital project. And if we can stay within the local share that we're currently at where those blue bars are, that project could be a no additional tax impact to the community. So with a drop off in the 33 fiscal year, again, it takes a long time to plan for a project and get through SED to market the project and get voter approval. So a good time frame for a drop off in the 33 fiscal year would be looking at a capital project vote in either 2029 or 2030. And if that's too far for the district to wait, if you have needs that are, that you have right now, you do have some capital reserve dollars that are saved up that you could always look to do a no tax impact project, utilizing some of those capital reserve dollars to leverage your building aid, which would not have an impact on your local share.
And that, Chris, that could happen possibly in the 27-28 school year? If
you had the needs and since you have the capital reserve dollars available, a good rule of thumb for you is for each $1 million of capital reserve, you could leverage about $2.5 million of capital project work based on your building aid ratio. So if you had needs that you needed to get some work done in between the votes, you certainly could look to do so. And if it was aidable work, it could result in a no tax impact. That's not to say that it wouldn't have an impact on your budget, because your debt service lines might increase, but so would your revenues on that side of the equation as well.
Why is there that big spike right there where the local share drops down and then it bounces back up? Is that, I can't see the year.
Between 34 and 35.
Yeah, 33.
Yeah, so that could be just a product of some of your other capital projects that are at the end of their life in terms of the aid. We could certainly, if you have debt service fund available, we could certainly look to smooth that out, or as we build in the next project, we could structure the debt in a way that would level that out. So we could look at different strategies to fill that in. We're kind of limited on how we can structure your debt service, so we might not have been able to clean that up with the issuance of the $21 million capital project bond.
Desmond, do you know what we currently have in the capital reserve right now?
3.5.
Yeah, it's a little over 3 million.
Good timing for that question. Top row on the next slide is the balance in the capital reserve, so $3.5 million in the reserve at this as of your audit at the end of fiscal year 25.
Going back to that other chart, in 34 we see a very significant drop off with the blue.
Yeah.
If we were to do a project in 33, like how much of an impact?
We can certainly run numbers for you. It's tough to say exactly what size project you could do with that drop off because it really depends on how much of the project is aid eligible. So we could certainly run different scenarios for you, assuming that the project is fully aid eligible or assuming maybe like a 70% aid eligible project, just to kind of give you just to kind of quantify what size project could fit into that drop off.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful just to look, because that is a significant drop off that, obviously it's a long time till we get there, but at the same time, figuring out what makes sense.
It'll help you as you're working through your BCS to kind of know what items off of that list you may be able to afford and chip away with that next project.
Correct.
Yeah,
Chris, I
we
was
still
add
have
in-
quite a few items that are on.
There's a
our
lot. That's what I mean.
previous-
So to wait that long, I don't know. I mean, obviously we have the reserve, which is great, but that drop off and so far is,
Say again what the leverage that the reserve has to.
For a no tax impact, it's about $2.5 million per 1 million of reserve, and that's assuming a fully aid eligible project.
$2.5 million per one.
Yeah, so you could leverage, if you don't do a no tax impact in between that vote for the drop off, you could leverage your reserve dollars and the drop off to grow the size of that project as well.
3.5 and every 1 million is 2.5. Well, $7-8 million project.
Right.
I just want to point out
with
there,
no
hold on a second.
tax impact.
By March of 27, our building condition surveys due.
Right.
So we should probably look at that to see what we want to do. So 27, it's due, 27, 28, 28, 29, you start to craft where you want to put those dollars, but you've got a plan as to what you really want to work on. So it's not just, let's fix the boilers or this, it's really something that's, the state aid would also kind of follow it.
Correct.
So 327 is when it's due.
You got to throw into the clog in that whole mix would be where electrification is going with buses.
Correct.
That could be a big, big impact on not only our district, but every district in New York State.
Yeah, and we can certainly run different models for you, whether it's, you've historically issued bonds for your bus purchases, we could project out what that could look like if you have, what that fleet replacement could look like with electrification. The tough part to analyze right now is what vouchers may be available throughout this process, so that just changes the numbers, but we can start taking a look at that whenever you kind of have any of the data in terms of the bus replacement plan.
We're going to need infrastructure space. That's one of the big things that we need to start thinking about is if we get to that electrification process, we need a place to put them and we need a place for the materials to go. So I think that's going to come out of it. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit about the the electrification study that we are part of.
And just knowing that work, even though it's capital work, if it's to do with the electrification that's aided over 8 years, you get transportation aid back on those dollars as well. It's a little bit different of a formula, how we're reimbursed for infrastructure.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Sure.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
So on here, you had said that you did not predict any expenditure capital for transportation past the 25, 26, is that right?
Correct.
So in that column E, is that just kind of what's out there and what will be rolling off?
That's all of your bonds that have been issued that
Okay.
still have debt service associated with them. So
Okay.
typically we bond the buses over 5 years to line up with the 5 years of transportation aid that comes back for those purchases.
Okay.
If you're looking at EV buses, those are aided over 8 years, so we could look at financing those over 8 years to stretch that payment out. Or if you had the opportunity to shorten up the term of the financing, you could do 5 years for the term of the bonds and 8 years for the aid. It just depends on what the overall picture looks like, but we can evaluate that once we get to that point in time.
Okay.
The state has already issued what the aid is for EV buses.
The term of it,
Because I know on, right now on fossil fuel buses, it's what, 72% thereabouts?
Yeah, your ratio for reimbursement would be the same,
Be the same.
whether it's
All right.
gas, diesel, or EV. It's just the term of the buses. The reimbursement's over 5 years for your current purchases. Gas, diesel, it'd be 8 years if it's EV. It was 12 years, but the legislation changed a couple of years back, which is good because I don't buses lasting for 12 years, the batteries lasting for 12 years. I don't know a ton about that stuff, but
Yeah, true.
but I think 8 years is a better term to get your 8 back.
That
Well,
term is based on the expected life of
It's
that.
a period of probable usefulness, so that your capital projects you can generally finance over 30 years, but you're maxed out on the buses if it's an EV bus at 8 years.
And I think currently the cost of EV versus a fossil fuel is probably double or more.
400,000+
Yeah.
easily.
And you're under two well under two for a fossil fuel bus.
They extended it to that age. I mean,
Only 3 years though.
Right.
5 to 8.
yeah. But there's not, I mean, what's saying that it's gonna last 3 more years than a fossil fuel bus, right? It's just probably
Yeah,
double
like
the aid. They
Chris
can't,
just said we have no clue on the
right.
the life cycle of the batteries and all that. I mean,
Imagine that they get better over time, but who's
I know the batteries in a golf cart, if you gotta replace them, it's over $1,000. That's just for a small golf cart. I can imagine what buses would be. I don't think anybody's really,
I work with some districts that have purchased EV buses. Gage, Chiland, Monroe County is a district that's done a lot of work with this, with the zero emission bus infrastructure and the purchase of buses, and they've had success from what I've heard, but I don't know how much they're not telling people.
you can have
Just to be
success.
completely honest.
You can have success for the handful of buses, but
Yeah.
if you've got a whole fleet,
It's also been pretty cold in Rochester, so I don't know if they're telling you us about that either. So, next slide again is a look at your. This kind of gets into the 5-year projection piece of the presentation. It's a look at your overall fund balance over the last few years. So again, the top row is your capital reserve dollars, that $3.5 million that you have available. We did unhide the reserve for transportation. That could be an opportunity for the districts with the zero emission bus infrastructure and the purchase of those buses going forward. That you have dollars available at the end of the year, that could be a place to set aside some dollars to offset the impact of the cost of those buses in the future. I've seen where those reserves, those language has been written in such a way that you can use those funds for infrastructure as well. So that could be an opportunity as well. The real takeaway on this page is just bottom line. The district has been, you've had a couple of good years, and your overall fund balance has increased over the last couple of years. Next slide is a look at your state aid projections. So for the current year and 26-27, we are taking the numbers right off of the latest state aid runs. So again, foundation aid, a little over 13.5 million. The only line items that we've adjusted on here would be for your building aid, for your BOCES aid for the project, and for your aid coming back in on your transportation bus purchases. Again, because we work very closely with Desmond and the business office to project those out. So we've overrode those numbers in the report. And then going forward, we're keeping everything constant. Keeping foundation aid at a 1% increase for future year. So that's a little bit different than the last version of the report that we ran back in 2024, where at that time more of the conversation was that a lot of more unknowns about foundation aid. It does appear that, given the governor's proposal, that a 1% increase is realistic to assume. So we are assuming that going forward in the analysis here. That's really the only change that we've made from the state aid going forward, is just that those couple of pieces that I just mentioned there. Next slide is a lot of data. This is a look at your tax cap projection for the next handful of years. Well, the main purpose of this is that we're trying to just see what your tax levy increases may be over the next 5 years, what your allowable is based on your capital exclusion, and projecting out what those increases can be so that we can project out for your revenues, mainly being your tax levy in the future years. The real purpose and the objective of this page is just to prove out that this plan can be accomplished without any supermajority overrides or any 60% plus votes needed. So on the revenues page, we are, in the blue boxed in page is the expectations that we worked with Desmond in the business office on to come up with for where we anticipate the end of the year could be. And then we're projecting off of that value for future years at the property tax increase levy amounts, the percentages that we calculated on the prior tax cap page. So this analysis does assume that you're going out to the max cap in each of the next 5 years. And then in the bottom part of it, we've got your state aid, again, pulling from the prior state aid page within the analysis here. So real takeaway from this page is based on the assumptions that we're using here for the foundation aid increase and the increases in property taxes, we're at about a 1.6% increase per year average for revenues. So keep that number in mind when we flip over to the expenses. And again, very small font, apologize for that. But what we're doing on this page is basing, again, the blue boxed in row is based off the expectations of where we are projecting the year end to be for you for each of these categories. And then using some assumptions to project out percentage increases forward for salaries, insurance, hospital, medical, and dental, as well as including from prior slides within the analysis itself, the debt service projections that we had based on your most recent bond issuances and all of your outstanding debt service. So bottom corner of that page, 4.6% average increase in expenses based on the assumptions being used here. So when we switch ahead to the fund balance projection slide, it's not going to be a surprise to see that as those percentages go out for the next handful of years, going out at 1.5% revenue increase, 4.6% expenses, that our revenues and expenses start to go in the direction where the expenses are outpacing the revenues. So showing a deficit first in fiscal year 28, and then as those expenditures grow out based on the projections, the percentages that we're using in analysis, those continue to grow out through fiscal year 31. Overall bottom line fund balance projection based on the current amount that's in the fund balance and incorporating these projections, we don't see you going into the red until fiscal year 2031. So the district and the board has done a good job of setting yourself up nicely with the fund balance that you have currently, that even with these projections for the expenditures outpacing the revenues, that you are still sustainable and still staying in the red or staying in the black all the way out through fiscal year 31. The majority of the times when we do these presentations, the projection for to go into the deficit is much sooner. Usually we see that in 29 or 30. So again, it just speaks to the district doing a great job of setting aside those reserves and putting yourself in a position where you can weather the storm, even if these percentages do come true.
So that means in 2031, though, we're in the red with no reserves left to help handle that.
Based on these assumptions, correct.
So, I mean, we're in the red. Essentially, we're in the red a lot sooner, maintaining a comfortable reserve balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's never great to see that on there, but it does give you a little bit of a runway. So really, just being mindful of big expenses, negotiations, taking advantage of what you can take advantage of, and that's your property taxes and your revenues, making sure that you're maximizing state aid returns back on if there's BOCES programs that you can do shared services. So just looking for opportunities where you can potentially cut expenditures or increase revenues. So again, this model projects going out at the max tax cap that's allowable based on the current formula.
And this doesn't take into consideration a possible project down the line that can help start returning some funds.
This does not at this point incorporate any,
Okay.
So that could be, with that drop up in 33, the next version of this report that we do, you might see that projection start to play into the equation, which would be potentially increased expenditures on the debt service side, but also increased revenues on the building aid side. In terms of a levy, I think the expectation would be is that we would maintain the same current levy that we're at for buildings and capital work, unless the needs arose that you needed to go out for another tax increase for additional work.
So does this projection rely on using that capital fund balance, the capital reserve, in order to make it work every year?
We're assuming, no, we're just showing the balances there.
Okay.
What we're assuming is that you would liquidate the unassigned fund balance
The
first,
other
and then you would
stuff,
tap
not-
into your restricted reserves or your restricted fund balance at that point to stay. At that point, you'd have you would have to tap into other reserves to make sure that you're able to pay the bills. So
Right, that's it, okay.
yeah, that's why we keep them constant, because it's sometimes a little bit easier just to see if we adjust the unassigned fund balance just to show where the negative would be. But overall, you would be utilizing all of your available fund balance in year 5.
So it does include the capital reserve.
It does assume that eventually by 31 is using all
So if we-
unassigned and
So for example, if we did a capital project, I know it's not realistic, next year and use that 3.5.
Yep.
We would be in the red much before 2031,
potentially based on these
potentially based on
these
the assumptions that are being made.
Right.
I just want to make sure, like, we all understand, like, that 2030 or 31 is saying that we're using that 3.5 for regular expenses.
Right, but also that if we use that 3.5 sooner, then we're going to be
Because the aid
realizing
on it.
the aid back
Right.
sooner. So it's hard to say where that number is going to fall until we get to that year. I think that's one of the issues that a few years ago, this looked much more dire than it does tonight. Because we didn't know how much that aid was going to come back to help fill these buckets, so to speak.
Yeah, there's been since the last report, there's been a couple of changes. That's certainly one of them. Your starting balance for where you have fund balance is in a healthier position than 2 years ago. We did see a good increase in foundation aid in the prior year, and then projecting out 1% for the increase compared to the 0% in the previous version is also helping to push out that kind of cliff further out.
Good point.
Deficit's 27, 28.
Say that again.
The last presentation, we were looking at possible deficits of 27, 28.
Well, I mean, here you're showing a deficit in 28 without using your reserves.
Right.
So, like you said, not as dire as it was before, but still.
It still shows red, so it still points to just being mindful of the decisions that are being made that can impact the long term.
The need might arise to utilize that reserve prior to going out to the capital reserve, only because it was, what, 3 to 4 years ago when we proposed this current capital project. Then it went to design and SED and all that. At that point, we did have some issues with boilers and such, so they might creep up on us before we do our next building condition survey to see where overall we are. So we could do a smaller project at any point. We don't have to use the whole 3.5 million to kind of catch up on some of those priorities that we had then that we weren't able to fund.
I mean, hopefully throughout this, we're able to allocate some additional to that capital fund, but that all comes with seeing how everything shakes out as well.
Right.
Yeah, if you have needs, if you have reserves, or if you have available dollars at the end of the year, then the capital reserve or the transportation reserve might be good places to tuck some of those dollars away, because it can give you the ability to leverage those dollars to offset future costs for your capital work. So again, just moving forward, we try to update these every year or two. We can certainly do it every year if the board finds it helpful. 2 years in between since the last one, so totally up to the board and administration how you want to proceed. If you want us to do an update next year or the following year, we can kind of see how these numbers have turned out and kind of what adjustments have been made. Maybe we'll get a little more foundation aid, or the state will be generous. We'll see. Other questions?
Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming down.
Safe trip.
I think that presentation was very beneficial for the
It
board.
is every time. Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You can sit around for a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to our budget presentation, budget development. Thanks.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, so I'll try and make it short and sweet. We'll start off with tonight, we're going to discuss, let me just make sure this is working here. Great. So tonight, the presentation will cover the final tax levy calculation. We'll talk about the state aid or the executive run or the governor's run as we know it, and the estimated additional revenue sources that we have for the school district. We are in phase or step 2 of our 5-step budget development process. And here is our calculation for the tax levy. Now, I know at our last month, we did the entire tax levy calculation, and I'm sure everybody remembered the formula and how it worked out. So this is the pop quiz. So
This is a test?
yeah, it's a test. Short and simple, this is the comparison between last month's calculation and this month's calculation. I'd like to say that the calculations have been vetted by Chris and our fiscal advisors, so these numbers do tie out. The major difference that we have here is actually the adjustment here of $18,594. That is basically a change in the debt service, which Chris alluded to, part of that $30,000, and some changes that we had from BOCES debt service. So initially, this will bring us down by the 18,000, and now we are down to $34,817,153. As we go here, this will become the final tax levy calculation that you are scheduled to approve tonight. Questions? Comments? Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on to the state aid portion of the state aid revenue. And I'll simply start off with foundation aid changes are due to the various factors such as the CPI index increase, student counts, and other census data. Some of the expense-based aids are impacted by what's considered to be the resident weighted daily attendance, or otherwise known as the RWADA. I had to write that down really slowly because last time it took a bit to say it. The full explanations of the state aid definitions can be found on the website, which is part of the presentation if you'd like to look at that. So let's dive right into the numbers. These are the foundation numbers. As Chris said, they pull right from the governor's run. We start off by showing you some of the increases in some of the numbers. Our foundation aid is going up by $133,698. Our BOCES is increasing by $231,706. Our private excess cost is increasing by $30,303. Our hardware and technology, which is a slight increase, is only going up by $2,447. And our transportation aid is going up by $93,023. There are some declines, as you can see in our high cost, excess cost of $35,000. And we have a software library textbook decline of $2,661. The biggest issue that we're having is the building aid going down by $155,617. And we will be looking at those areas that are going down, especially the high excess cost. The software textbook, we'll look at that. I've always tried to maximize that category. I've actually this year told the principals in all the buildings to see if we can spend, because that is one of the aid ratios where it is an actually one-to-one ratio. We spend, we get $1 back. Not like some of the other aid ratios, which are based upon a percentage in the calculation. We do have a charter school $1,000, but we'll see how that materializes. Moving forward, we roll that number with the $21,322,754. We roll that number forward, and now we add that to our other state aid or other revenue sources. In our other revenue sources, we have $210,000 in Medicaid, an additional $10,000. We are exploring other possibilities of getting other aid, transportation, Medicaid revenue we're looking at, and looking at how we can push that line there to see if we get more Medicaid aid. We've got payments in lieu of taxes, which are, once again, they will go up each year based upon the legal criteria that pilots will increase every year. So we've got a slight increase for this year upcoming. Other revenue sources we can talk about in a minute, and our interfund transfer, which was provided to us by our fiscal advisors of $30,000. We are not in this presentation right now using any type of reserves to kind of close that gap until we look at our expenses, which will be presented next month. In terms of the tax levy, we rolled that number forward, which we are going to agree to tonight, and we'll end up with an estimated for the 26-27 school year, $58,362,759 budget or revenue that we'll expect. I will say that in the other revenue sources, even though it says $55,000 deficit, we are going to explore some of the revenues that make up that category. Our interest revenue, some of our BOCES aid revenue, the excess cost that we get in there. We are looking to dive into those numbers and give a better estimate. I was being very conservative in that line. As you go through your first budget, you kind of pull back and then you go dive a deeper dive to say, well, let's look at our interest. Our interest is coming in very strong. Do we expect to get that same number next year? We'll add that, and that could probably be another increase there. We're looking at the late fees that we get for the tax levies. That was healthy this year. Do we expect that number to grow next year, or should we keep it flat? So those are some of the areas that we're going to dive into. I'll explore even further as we go through the budget process, but I just want to make sure that we had something to start with. That brings us to the increase for next year of only $657,910.
What is the interfund transfer again?
The interfund transfer is the transfer of $30,000 from debt service into the general fund. This is for us to pay down our debt service. We have the additional funds left over, and as Chris had mentioned, you don't want to push the entire amount that we have left over into 1 year. You kind of bleed it over time. So we're going with $30,000, and I think that was in his presentation as one of the columns in orange. As I said, we haven't looked at the reserves. We're not touching the reserves at this point in time, but I'll repeat it as we dive into the expense side, which we've been doing all week, and I will continue to do for the next couple of weeks. Looking at our expenses, we've gone through the salary increases, we projected them out, making sure that we've got the steps and lane increases. We've looked at our debt service, putting those expenses in there. We've taken a look at our health bills. We're looking at those costs. We're looking at every single cost and kind of looking at 23, 24, 24, 25, and what we're spending in 25, 26 to come up with what I consider to be the average. Let's look at the trends, high, lows. Some months or some years we had some high spots, peaks, and others we had some lows. I need to kind of balance that out. The key is looking at your expenses at this point in time. I know where my revenue is, and then next month I'll be presenting to you the revenue and the expenses and where the shortfalls are. I know we would like to kind of keep our fund balance healthy. I'm hoping this year we do have some money left over, but at some point in time, we have to consider using some of the reserves or use some of our other fund balance. And with that being said, I'll roll it forward. The next timelines are March 2nd, I have to submit the 26-27 calculation of the tax levy to the Office of State Controller. Since you're approving it tonight, we'll be well ahead of that time frame. March 10th, we would be at the BOE, the Board of Education meeting. We'll do the administration proposal. Basically, it's the expense side. So I'm not taking any vacation time between now and then. And March 22nd meeting, we will go through the expense side, the expenses and revenue, and the recommended shortfalls and how we would close that. Any questions? Good. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Desmond. Again, if anybody needs any information in between meetings, just reach out to Desmond if you need any clarification. All right, we'll move on to our consent items from EA1 to B.3.
Have a safe trip.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Safe trip.
Thanks. As usual, we can pull items out, we can table. If you want clarification, just shout it out. Right now, I am proposing that we table on the coaches' positions on our fall 2026 season. Varsity football, varsity assistant, modified, and modified coaches. I think there's got to be some discussion here with the board. This is going to fall under personnel. We'll do that in executive session at the end of the meeting. I don't think there is a real rush to have this approved this evening. We can wait until the March 10th meeting. So, but that's a decision of the board. If we are to come back out of executive session to, if anybody has any issues, I mean, if you don't feel that you want some clarification there, then we can move it forward now. But I would like to table that for the time being. Anyone else have any questions, comments, any clarification?
Do you want to just table those positions, or you want to table the fall season until the next meeting?
No, just those positions. Just those positions. All right. I was saved from reading our emergency declaration and resolution for the water main break, so we included that in the consent agenda. For those that need clarification, we did have a major water main break. It was declared an emergency. We are allowed to declare it as an emergency. It is in the process of being rectified right now, and hopefully up and running soon. By the weekend. We were able to support the high school with a water tanker. I think everybody got that in their updates. So we lost no student instruction time. And I got to shout out to our buildings and ground for staying on top of this and moving it quickly. Probably in less than 2 weeks we'll have it rectified.
And I think that's in addition to some other challenges that I've seen, come through. So certainly a busy time for them. So I appreciate their, I mean, the weather hasn't been kind to our buildings.
So that's where we are right now. I'd like to just pull out those 5 positions for now until we have discussion, and a motion to move the rest of the consent agenda forward. Motion by Jen, second by Ed. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
I just would like to acknowledge 2 retirees this evening. They're not with us this evening, but they will be invited to our retiree reception at the end of the year. Karen Super, 28 years of service at the elementary school, and John Brenny, thank you for your service to both of those people. John Brenny also 28 years of service to the district. So congratulations to those 2 folks, and we will see them hopefully at the June retirement reception.
Okay, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Boyd.
So each year we have a panorama survey that we conduct. So part of it goes out to families, part of it's done by staff, and the third part is actually done by students. So we look at family-school relationships, social-emotional learning, a couple of different areas. So we'll be putting that out over the next couple of weeks. Usually we send home a postcard to families with a QR code to try to make it easy to access for the survey, and then students will be completing them in school. And staff as well. So that will be coming out. This Friday, we have a half day of professional development. We're going to be focusing on school safety, co-teaching, student and staff wellness, station and center-based teaching, data-informed practices and planning, and I'll be doing some sessions on some of the New York Inspires and Portrait of a Graduate that we've been talking about. We actually just attended last week the second session for the county on that. No real substantial updates as of now. They seem to be pushing out the guidance on the credits and kind of where we move to next. They originally had said winter of 26 and then spring, and now it's seemingly summer. So we will be meeting again at the end of April for our next session with the entire county. We are currently part of a targeted monitoring review. This is another audit that looks at our ESSA-funded programs and our title grants. It's a pretty extensive one that we're working on right now. So we're working through that, and we'll be doing that by the end of the month. We met early last week with BOCES for our ISR, so we're looking at all of our services that we're putting a request for BOCES. So we're still reviewing those, and then we'll finalize that in April and May with our final requests. And other than that, we've been meeting with our buildings, looking at staffing and scheduling, planning all of our schedules. Students are meeting with guidance, looking at what next year looks like, so we can start planning accordingly and then begin to build out our schedules. And lastly, our kindergarten registration opened up on February 2nd. As of this afternoon, we had 58 packets out. So pretty high number for early on. I think there is typically a rush at the beginning of, everybody excited to get that, and then it will slow down a little bit. But as of now, we have 58 packets out.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Boyd? Thank you, sir. Our superintendent.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier during the earlier presentation, NYSERDA has deemed us a priority district, so they are paying for an electrification study to be done here in the district, and we will be working with INF Associates. Pete Miller has already started that communication, and those folks will be visiting our district in the near future. As you know, we talked a few meetings ago about doing a safety risk assessment. Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES will be conducting that. Frank Guglieri, I believe the guy's name was, he will be to us soon. We are in the pipeline, but there were other districts that got there first. So as soon as I have a final outcome on that, I'll let you know. And then just a reminder, this week, students have a half day on Friday. Staff development happens in the afternoon. There is no school next Monday or Tuesday. Monday for President's Day, Tuesday for the Lunar New Year. Parent-teacher conferences. We are to the spring parent-teacher conferences already, so the schools are getting ready to send out information to parents. But just as a heads up, the high school will be on February 26th from 5 to 8 p.m., the elementary school on March 4th from 5 to 8 p.m., the middle school on March 5th from 5 to 8 p.m., and then the district-wide ones happen in the morning on Friday, March 6th from 8 to 11 a.m. And then next weekend or 2 weekends from now, Patrick and I will be attending the NISCUS conference in Albany and Lobby Day. So that's where we will be hopefully getting more information about Portrait of a Graduate and the credits and the rollout of the curricular pieces, but also they've added a lobby day for superintendents to actually meet with legislators to, foundation aid is great, but there's member money out there, so we would like to get our piece of that as well. So we will be taking advantage of the time in Albany to visit with our representatives.
Any questions for the superintendent? We're good. Thank you, Joel. Okay, on the Board of Education, new business, BOCES annual meeting and board member administrative budget vote will be held on April 8th, and that's the annual meeting, and the countywide vote is on April 21st, which would be a board meeting.
It's a regular board meeting.
Regular board meeting. In the past, they've always kind of didn't coincide with board meetings. Nominations for the component district for vacancies no later than March 22nd. Yeah, there's nobody for Highland, but there's, I think, 4 at large and 1. So there is a list there. We can support them if you want. All right. Anyone have anything for new business? All right, we'll move on to old business. New sport, girls wrestling team. I'll read the resolution, then we can have discussion. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the establishment of a new sports team known as Girls Wrestling Team, effective for the 2026-2027 season. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Heather, second by Janine. Discussion. I think we had the presentation at the last meeting, so everybody knows roughly what the cost would be. Our athletic director is here if you have any additional questions. But I just want to emphasize, and this is from the state, the reason why they're splitting girls from boys for various reasons, but they want it that way. So I just want to be accurate in saying that we're going to have a boys coach, a boys assistant coach, a girls coach, and a girls assistant coach. These teams are not going to intermingle. They're not going to co-practice. They're going to be separate. All right, separate practices, possibly for maybe an illness or something like that, where they have to join together. But otherwise, what the state is looking to do is keep these programs separate. Frank, as far as matches, they will be in separate directions.
Yeah, they're separate. Just to give you a quick thing on where we're at. Previous to the last couple of years, a girl could wrestle a mixed competition. They were able to wrestle with the boys. For the last 2 years or so, we've had girls that wrestle, and they would be under a mixed competition with our boys team. They were able to go wrestle in a girls only tournament or matches, as well as mixed competition. Starting next year, that is separate. So if let's just say we did not have a girls program, we still could have girls wrestle, but they would be under mixed competition and only be able to wrestle that way. So if our school was playing another school and they had a girl, but it was mixed competition, they could compete, but it would be under the wrestling, under the boys part. I know it confused a little bit, but what we're looking to do is have 2 separate programs at the varsity level, and have a girls team and a boys team, and it'll lead right up to sectionals, where the girls would have a sectional championship and the boys would have one. There is that right now. Some of our girls this year can compete to advance in a girls state or sectional tournament, the way it sits now. Next year they will not. We need to divide, and that's why we're looking to have 2 teams.
So right now, the boys program has modified JV and varsity?
No, all we have is modified boys and varsity boys. That's what we have listed with the state right now. We do not have JV.
We don't have JV.
We do not have JV. No.
So for the girls, we're only looking for JVs, or only looking for varsity?
Correct.
So what happens if there's a
If a 7th and 8th grader can test up, APP, advanced placement test, they have a possibility to test up to be a varsity wrestler. If not, they would be able to still be able to wrestle under mixed competition at the modified level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, clarifications? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to move forward with girls wrestling team. Motion was made by Heather and seconded by Janine. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? So carried, 6-0.
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry. For the programs like this, I know we always say if you don't have enough players, right, to be part of that sport, then we wouldn't hold it, right? Is there, for these individual, is there like a threshold that we would?
I believe number 7 weight classes.
Okay.
You may know.
Well,
Is it 7?
you could have multiple weight classes.
Right.
And your program may not have all those weight classes. Where that becomes a problem is when you go to league matches.
Right.
You'll lose the league match, but
But the
if
individual
you
can
only
still-
had, say you only had 2 girls on the team, and that one girl or one of those girls won at least 6 of her league matches, she would still be qualified for
Correct.
sections.
Correct.
She has to have she have to have a certain number of points or wins to qualify for sections. And in general, I think the weight classes for girls are up to 10 or 12, similar to the boys. And you can compete league matches, but then where they get a lot of mat time is on the weekends when they have tournaments. And right now they're offering all girl tournaments, and it's a balance between where we're sending people, because we just don't have coaches to send. We don't have enough coaches to send half of them to boys and half of them to, like, can't be in two places at one time.
So I guess my question is, like, if we had 2 girl wrestlers, right? What is that threshold where you would, if you can't field a team, obviously it's one thing, but if you have one female wrestler, right? Like, from a district perspective, not looking to cut opportunities for that female, but the cost of that program and operating that program needs to be considered.
An example would be where Marlboro shadowed us for well over 10 years.
Correct.
Having 1 or 2 wrestlers. This year they went off on their own.
Okay.
I mean, my goal is, and with myself speaking with John McFarland, the head coach, we're hoping to have a team. We're hoping to have 10, 11 girls and have a team and hopefully balance out the weight classes to where we can compete and not necessarily just win individually, but also win as a team.
Right. I just encourage, like, as we go, like, I think right now it's a strong participation, but you never know as things flux, like, just something we have to keep an eye on.
Frank, now that the Marlboro boys team is split off to their own team, is there an opportunity there for girls from, say, Marlboro that might want to come to Highland?
That's not my call.
No, I'm just saying.
I mean, there is, but
have we been approached yet?
No.
Okay.
No. They wouldn't come over as a merged team. We've had that situation in swimming where the section turned that down. Where we're merging that way, they possibly can come over as a shadow, but
that's what I was thinking.
After John and I spoke about this numerous times, and our goal is to have a team, not necessarily 1 or 2 females, but we're looking to have a team of 10, 12 girls and be able to compete as Highland.
Okay.
Okay. Anything for good and welfare of the district? Other miscellaneous? All right, I apologize. I didn't open up to public comment on the front end, but it's all game now. We have back end public comment, so you can ask agenda questions or general questions. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted on the water main break. Did that impact the entire building?
Yes, it was the water coming into the high school.
High school. Didn't affect the bus garage, but the high school.
And in terms of the bathrooms and water fountains and things, that was all shut off?
The water source coming into the high school was impacted.
Okay.
So we brought in
trailers of water. Tronsolito Brothers brought in fresh water, and we backfed the entire high school. By that means.
And how many days did that last, give or take?
It's still going on.
It's a week ago Monday.
Yeah, it's about it. We're in our second week.
And do you have an estimated cost for the repairs?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Yeah, we have a budget number, but there's variables that affect that number, so it's not a firm number yet.
Until you get closer to them, right?
We should be complete by the weekend.
I follow you. Okay.
And we'll have a
fingers crossed. Right?
Yeah. They're moving along fairly well out there. I mean, with the ground being frozen, they've done a lot of work at thawing the first couple of layers of ground to make sure that they weren't hitting anything else.
Right.
So they've done a very good job in a very quick amount of time. So, and it's been freezing out, as we all know.
Man. Yeah.
So thank them for their hard work. And thankfully, we did not need to close school because of that. So.
Right. So translators responded pretty quickly?
Very quickly. Pete Miller would know exactly how many hours, minutes. If that's what you're looking for, I don't have that information.
He's the guy.
Yes.
Thanks, appreciate it.
No, from when it was identified as a leak, they moved quickly. Pete and his staff moved quickly to identify it, do the background checks. They brought in Town of Lloyd Water Department to try to search for where the break is.
Okay.
They brought in another firm out of, I believe, the state, came in. So they identified where the break was. It was underneath our practice field. So to be out in the open with it, we elected to move the new water line around the practice field back into the high school, so it will never impact the turf field. What was determined that once you start digging up that turf field, you would never put it back to its original condition. So it wasn't
Practice turf field, not the new.
Not the new. Practice turf field.
I heard turf field and lost my mind.
So we bypassed the practice field, and they're home stretch right now.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Yep. Anyone else for public
I just
comment?
have a quick question. I've been asked by a few people, do we have any info out yet? I'm looking at Dr. Wood, for UPK.
So we put out the RFP for local community-based organizations to put in. So we're finishing that process up, and then we have the timeline. We're hopefully to get that out soon to posting for families to start to register. And then we get we'll find out soon our funding from the state that kind of dictates between that amount per student and then what the community-based organizations can handle. That dictates a lot of our numbers.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close public comment, and I need a motion to go into executive session for personnel. Motion by Heather, second by Jen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. I think we can remain.